What's up guys? So like I said in my last video, today I'm going to be going over how exactly I edit my Gunpla photos. We'll be going over a bunch of different options, including some free ones if the only gear you have is a smartphone, and pretty much I'm going to take you step by step through the process that I take to edit my photos. Let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, so here I have the 3 photos that we'll be editing today. All of them are going to be of the real grade 00 Quanta in the same pose. I also use the same lighting techniques that I talked about in the previous video, but the difference with each of these photos is this first one was taken on my mirrorless camera. The second one was taken on my iPhone 10, but with an app that lets me take raw photos. And this third one was taken straight from the iPhone camera app. So before digging in, let's talk a little bit about raw photos. The benefit of raw photos is essentially it captures a lot more image data and it remains uncompressed, so we're able to manipulate a lot more when we're editing the photos. So I'm going to run through with the photo from my mirrorless camera, and then I'm going to repeat pretty much the same steps on the remaining 2 photos. By the way, right now we're editing in Adobe Lightroom 2020. So first things first, I'm going to bump up the exposure a little bit to get some detail out of the picture. As you can see, all of the white parts are a little blown out, so I'm going to bring down the highlights. Afterwards, I'll bring down the shadows a little bit to give them a little more definition. Bump up the exposure a little more now that everything is dimming down. Bring up the whites a little bit. You can probably see these big circles here. That's actually a little bit of dust that was on my lens. Then I will bring down the blacks to clear up the background. I'm not a professional editor, by the way. If you are a professional editor, you're probably criticizing me for not looking at my waveform chart over here. So I'm bringing down the blacks just to clear out that black background that I had. Then I'm going to boost the contrast just a little bit, and this will give us a little more separation between the shadows and the colors. Next, we're going to manage our colors. First thing we're going to do is adjust the white balance. So when I edit my photos, I use white balance to convey a mood. Typically, because Gundams are giant robots, they kind of have that cold feeling, so I put it more to the blue side. After that, we're going to boost our saturation just a little bit, and right now I feel like these reds, especially on the feet, are really popping out, so I want to take care of that. In the color mixer, I'm going to isolate the reds and bring down the luminance, and at the same time I'm going to go to the blues, boost the saturation a little bit, and I'm actually going to bring them a little darker. The yellows right here look really bland, so I'm going to take those, boost the saturation, and bring them a little over to the orange side. So already the colors are really popping out, but in a good way. Nothing seems too overwhelming to me, and there's a couple more steps we have left to do. So the big thing about Gunpla kits is they have a lot of detail in them, so that's where I go to the effects area. I'm going to boost the texture up until where it starts looking fake, and then I'll pull it back a little bit. Same thing with the clarity. If you bring it all the way up, it almost looks like a titanium finished kit. And so now it looks really sharp and detailed. So the last thing we're gonna do is check for imperfections. For that, I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in on the picture. There is a little bit of noise in here, so I'm gonna bring up the noise reduction up until I start seeing that noise completely go away. You don't wanna necessarily boost this all the way because it can make the picture look a little cloudy. So right there at 74, it seems just about right for me. As you can see, after using the noise reduction, it is a little cloudy, so I'm gonna take some sharpening, and that should clean up the noise reduction. Last thing to do is crop the image. That's where we are going to go by the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is a large concept that you might want to look into on your own, but for this image, what I'm going to do is actually crop it down a bit, and I'm going to move the torso over to this intersection right here. After that, I'm going to align it more so that the head straightens out with the body, and there is our finished result. Here is the original before all the edits, and here is the finished product, so it's a pretty drastic change if you ask me. Alright, next we're going to be taking a look at the raw image from the smartphone camera. Now while I edit this, I do want to note that I actually took this using a free app that I found today on the Apple App Store. So there's definitely some options out there for people who don't have their own mirrorless camera. Like I said in the last video, I don't think having a mirrorless camera is necessarily the most important thing. Now I am noticing that with the raw image from the camera, there is a lot more noise in the shadows. That's going to be a little harder to get rid of. And we will go into our noise reduction once again. As you can see, when we zoom in here, it does look pretty different from shooting on the mirrorless camera, especially when we bring up that sharpening. And lastly, we're going to go ahead and crop it down again. And there we have our finished product. Here is the original of the iPhone raw image, and here is the finished product. So comparing it to the mirrorless camera, there's not too much of a difference at first glance. It's only when you zoom in that you start to see there's a little bit of loss of detail there. But I think overall most people would be pretty satisfied with this. Okay, and the last image we have is the iPhone camera, but this one is taken straight out of the camera app. So this one isn't raw, so we might not be able to manipulate it as much as the others as much as we want to, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so there's our finished product, and this one actually turned out a lot better than I expected it to. So this is the original image, and here is the finished product, and here it is compared to the raw image from the iPhone. Maybe if I make this a little blue, it would be more accurate. But yeah, there's actually less noise in the iPhone one than we have in the raw photo. Very surprising. Here as well, the GN Saber, you can't really see the outline of it anymore, whereas in the iPhone photo, it's still pretty clear. And let's compare it to the mirrorless picture. The mirrorless photo definitely looks a lot sharper off the bat, but for the most part, the colors are still mostly there. Maybe if I shift this towards the magenta a little bit, yeah, I would say it's still a pretty good looking picture. So yeah, out of those three, let me know which ones you like the most out of them. So lastly, we're going to take the same mirrorless raw photo and edit it in a free software known as Polar. So this is actually a completely free web browser program. I've honestly never used it before, but we'll see how it goes. So that is actually not too bad for a free software. There is a little less clarity, especially if we zoom in. As you can see, it's pretty pixelated, so it seems like it downscales it a bit. But if you're posting on Instagram, that's pretty good for a free software. So once again, guys, let me know which photo you like the most down below. I'll include links to all of these softwares if you're interested, as well as some camera apps. But most importantly, I hope you guys were able to take away something from this. You don't necessarily have to follow my edits to a T. I mostly wanted to show you guys what I look for when editing a Gunpla photo. If you do have any more questions, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. That's usually where I'm most responsive. And if you want to send any of your edits my way, I'd love to check them out. So anyways, guys, after you get your kits all finished up, go ahead, start taking some pictures and start editing and building.